And what's the topic, Eileen?
Topic is step 6. Karen's going to speak about.
Okay, Carin.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Going to take one of these earplugs out because I sound funny. Thank you very much. Hopefully everybody can understand my Paisley, proud to be Paisley accent. I'm rough and ready from alcoholism, growing up in it, so I don't have many airs and graces attached to my voice. I would like to speak nice and polite so people understand me, but I don't know if I will. I'll just go with the flow. I'll try my best. How the heck do I top that, Mary Perrell and Rick J? I'm like, who put me on after them? Were they wanting to cause me stress? I'm just so inspired by Mary Perrell and Rick. You know, I want you to sponsor me now. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic, and that special relationship or sponsorship, it's second to none. You know, the gift that comes from the wreckage of alcoholism, isn't it? You know, and how that first intimate relationship again that you get with life with sponsors, and just a wee bit in that, like Mary Perrell, my first sponsor was like having my mother, my first ever mother that loved me. So I'm going to try my best to share in step 6, and hopefully you'll hear my character defects because I have hundreds through my share. And I was just thinking, God, the higher power must be busy trying to get there's about 500 people been on this today. And imagine him trying to take all the character defects and get rid of them. You know, he must have a big bag of people's character defects somewhere. But I grew up as a young girl. I've got a big family, 6 years, 5 girls, one unfortunate boy that don't think he managed well in amongst 5 women. And my dad left when I was 9, and my dad's dead now. I think he possibly died through alcoholism, but I don't know if he ever called himself an alcoholic. But he left when I was 9, and my mother's drinking took off. And my mother was a crazy drunk. I would love to say she was a functioning alcoholic, but she was a mental alcoholic. You know, she was out in the street, everybody seen her. She carried out acts in alcoholism that probably no child should witness or see, but I did. And I love my mother to death. I just say, but I seen all these defects of her character through alcoholism when it was active, and so from that, I think I learned that these were traits that I was to mimic and learn through growing up in it. And my mother is sober today. She's got about 30 odd years sober, and she's great in sobriety, but in alcoholism she was great as well. You know, she was the director of the show and in charge of the world, and I was terrified. You know, her voice scared me. She screamed and I jumped. She said that if I was to get smacked, I would have to be sent to the toilet first because I would wet myself. I was riddled with fear and I never knew it. So I probably at that point was always trying to be a good girl. You know, people please, that people pleasing Mary Perrell was talking about. I was a chronic people pleaser. And we grew up and we survived, and Aileen was texting me before this year, you know, and I was saying I was a street child. We grew up in the streets, you know, and we get the hard school in Ox, and as children we all stuck together, you know. This family illness brings you all together, you know. You stick up for each other and stand by the alcoholic. It's like stand by your man, you know. I didn't like my mother, but nobody else could say anything about her or be in trouble. So I learned about anger, I learned about aggression, I learned about just being who people thought I should be, you know, but I didn't learn about how to be me, and that went on for a while, and we were actually, alcoholism got us removed from my mother. You know, we were put in a children's home, what it's called in Scotland, and I hated that, you know, and that then told me must be something wrong with me. You know, my dad left and I thought he didn't love me. My mother drank and I thought she liked her bottle better than me. because I didn't understand. And then when we get removed, I thought it was my fault. And I had an underlying belief, and I only know that through recovery. I've learned this stuff, that I had an underlying belief that I was fundamentally unlovable. And it was impossible for me to believe that I deserved the love that you people deserved, that anybody deserved. There was no way that that was for me. And these character defects that I picked up along the way were my best attempts at getting my needs met. I would expect you to read my mind. I would huff and I would bang doors, and I would get dead angry inside my brain, but you didn't know it, and I would feel sorry for myself, and I'd be a total wee victim. And I was a survivor as well, I became a fighter. And in amongst that, I considered nobody, because I didn't know how to. The only thing I knew how to do was try and keep my mum happy, try to fix my mother. And I learned how to try and either cure them, fix them, or control them. And I was always trying to, my mother get sobriety, I was trying to still control her. I went into AA meetings. I was in Al-Anon at one point, and I didn't like it, and I ran away. I was a great runaway. I ran away. I could run away in a seat because my head ran. And I went to Al-Anon. My mother sent me there. She must have knew I was really unwell as a wee girl, and she must have knew I was quite damaged. And she got AA, and she put me in Al-Anon, and I didn't like it, and I never went back. I couldn't speak. That was another character defect. I could not speak and tell you how I felt, because I didn't know. I couldn't communicate. I was frozen with fear. And I went to Al-Anon, and then I used to go into the AA meetings with my mother. I loved it back then, I think. First of all, when she went to AA, I hated it, because I used to think when my mother gets sober, she'll be the mother she's meant to be. And then she wasn't. AA stole her, and she was never in, and I hated it. I think AA stole my ma, and my house was full of AA people, and I didn't like them. And I hated drunks as well. I hated all the drinking. I was the oversensitive one of the family, but I was Mrs. Reactor, so my character defect was to react, to shout and scream and get them all out. And I'll probably jump about, because I've actually wrote notes today. I never write notes, but the day I did, but I'm not even using them, because I just believe the higher power will give me what I have to say here. And whatever I have to say is meant to be. But when my mother, she got sober, and I went to this Al-Anon, didn't like it. It was like a big dark room, that's all I remember. I think somebody got a birthday cake, and I never went back. And then when I went round the rooms at AA, I used to sit with my mother in the seats, and I thought, people must have thought I was an alcoholic or something, but I just thought it was alright to be there, because I was going to make sure she was sober, and I never knew I was doing this stuff, it was just ingrained in me to fix, to make it better, to take care of, that over responsibility for my poor mother. And I was listening to Rick sharing, my dad left, and I loved my dad, but my mother had 6 kids and alcoholism, and one of them was disabled. And I remember getting taken to a phone box at night time, and my mother would scream down the phone at him because he'd left her. And so I had to go and camp mother, because I couldn't tell my mother I loved my dad and I wanted to see him. I was too scared to tell her, because she would make me suffer for that, and for years and years and years, I never get that involved with my dad. And now with a programme, I think I wish I had had something like what Mary Perrell was saying, somebody to say, don't get in the middle of the relationship. I had nobody to show me that, because when my mother's drinking took off, all the family, Runas, disappeared, they all ran away because she was crazy. And but anyway, eventually I went to Al-Anon when I was about 20 odds. I had a kid. They used to have creches and stuff. And I went through my life and I had a few relationships. I was like Rick, I had a few relationships, and I thought a relationship was sex. And I know this is getting recorded, and I really thought, don't talk about these things, Carin, but I'll talk about whatever comes. So, and I had a few relationships, and the first one died, and I was left with a child, and then I discovered I was pregnant, a month pregnant when it died. So that was me. How can I manage this? You know, how can I cope? And so I was back in that wee victim mode again. Poor me. Self-pity drove me. So he died, and in my head I used to think, I'll need to go and meet somebody else because I need to be, you know, I seen my mother with a lot of men, so I thought the answer to your problems was a man, you know, get a man and that'll fill the hole in my soul. I never knew it was a hole in my soul then, but I thought a relationship would make that happen. So I had all that ingrained stuff, of crazy thinking and crazy actions, and I was running on it. And I met my next relationship, and I've got a son to him, Declan, my youngest. I've got 3 kids. I've got Ashley, Duncan, and Declan, who I have damaged a lot, but I love them dearly. And I've got 3 wee grandkids as well, and I love them absolutely dearly. They're my unconditional love. You know, they're the ones that I've no damaged with this illness. I just adore them. And I'm trying to heal the relationships with my children. Don't think it's a bad relationship. They all love me, but I know I've caused that. I see the effects on my children, you know, and I know I passed that on. But I've forgiven myself for that today through the steps. But I met John and I had Declan, and that was a violent. I attracted what I was, you know. I was a screaming demon, and I attracted a lot of violence as well, you know. And I used to tell everybody he battered me. And when I think about it now, I think I was a willing partner in the dance. You know, I was verbally abusive, and then and how could I not expect him to finally react and maybe slap me or something? We were 2 adult children in carnage. Car crash waiting to happen, and there was all these wee kiddies around us, and I couldn't see any of these children. You know, I was blinded by what was going on because I was too busy, obsessed with me and obsessed with him. You know, but I wasn't obsessed with my children, unfortunately. And they just survived it, you know, the same as I survived. And I was always driven. I'm not going to date my kids; they'll not be damaged with this illness. And I didn't know I was doing it. So I came into Al-Anon at 25, and I would love to say that I came in and I get these sponsors that were like mammies. It was like having all these mammies and grannies I never had. And I'd love to say that I stuck around and I get well, and I did stick around for maybe 5 years, but I never ever did the steps. I just used to think the steps was step 4, and I was terrified because I think you'll not like me if you find out how bad I'm on inside. You know, and I don't know why I had that terrible self-condemnation of me, that I thought everything about me was wrong, and I was to the core just no, I didn't think I had a place in the world, you know, and I thought, and I know now, I blamed myself for this illness. It must have been my fault. And I don't know where I picked that up, to be honest, but I picked that up and I've carried that. And I'm 52 now and I've carried that for a long time. But today I know it's not my fault and I'm not to blame. But I know it's a blaming illness, you know, and I blamed everybody as well. But I came in and then I left, and I came back, and I used to call myself the guest appearer. I'd come back when I needed help, I'd get help, and then I'd leave again. And I was in and out Al-Anon, a chronic relapser, just like the alcoholic, back out the door, you know, back out for some more madness. And I would like to say that I didn't enjoy doing that, but I like going back. The madness is, I was addicted to excited misery, so I enjoyed going back out sometimes to my madness. I was a half measure. I didn't want to give you all. You know, I wasn't willing to go to any lengths. And I kept going in and out and in and out and messing about. And I could sit in the rooms and I could talk a good game. And people would come to me and say, "Oh, you're really great, Carin, you get a great programme, blah, blah, blah." And can I say that? It was bullshit, because I had never, ever known that I was meant to do an inside job. I thought I had to do all the outside things, and I did. I went to college, I went to uni, I learned to drive. I done all these things that made me look better. But see, inside I wasn't better. So I was still untreated effects of alcoholism, and I did not know how to tell you. Because the struggle I had was I was in the rooms at Al-Anon, so how could I admit that I still wasn't well in the rooms at Al-Anon when everybody was telling me that I was well, you know, and that was a block for me, and I would leave and they think I'm well and I'm not, and I didn't know how to get well, and I kept hearing about step 4, and I was terrified. And a couple of people, so long story short, I left and back, and about 4 years ago, I was in a job, and everybody was doing my head in. You know, I couldn't, I've learned now that I was incapable of having a relationship with myself, a higher power of any sort, because I believed in nothing, and I was incapable of having a meaningful relationship with another human being. And I was in this job, and I was a gossip, and I criticised, and I judged, and I did all that stuff, and I judged all using Al-Anon too. You know, it was an honest programme, and I'm honest today. And I judged and I criticised, and I remember leaving meetings, and we'd all come back to my house, and we'd all feed each other sickness. It was great. And I thought we were all well, you know, and we weren't. We were just feeding our own wellness, in my opinion. This is only my opinion. And so 4 years ago, this job that the higher power brought to me was where he gave me the real gift of desperation. I finally knew I can't even go on with people. I was always leaving jobs. I'm going to get a new job because they do my head in. My favourite work was you do my head, they do my head in. I can't handle that. You know, I had that big block. I can't handle that because everybody's the problem and it's not me. I didn't know I was the problem. I didn't know I was looking at every time. And I was like you, Rick. I couldn't look in the mirror. I hated myself. There was a wee woman in Al-Anon used to call me back in my younger days, wee Bonnie Carin, and I would cringe. And see, when I look back now, I was quite Bonnie, you know, and I think I wish I had appreciated my Bonniness back then. But I didn't. And so this time around I came back, and a couple of people says, you need a good step forward. But my mother had went to Al-Anon as well, and one of them had been my mother's sponsor, and I remember her saying to me in the rooms one day, something about my mother no loving me, you know, and I thought, my mother must have shared that with you in confidence, and you shouldn't really say that to me. And if I wasn't, at this point, I was in a better place, so I didn't take offence, because I took everything personal. I was oversensitive, I was over-responsible. Some of the things I learned about myself was all these character defects that I'll hopefully have time just to tell you a wee bit about. But eventually, I started praying to this God that I didn't even know there was a God, and I thought, please bring me a sponsor. I know this time I need to do something about me. Please, God, bring me a sponsor. And I used to hear this wee woman sharing the meetings, and she was dead. She shot for the hip, right? And I loved it, and I think I love what she says, and I could hear how she spoke, that she worked a programme. And I get the courage, you know, and I had to get the gift of courage as well, because I wasn't courageous at all. I couldn't show you what was happening inside me, and I couldn't tell you. So I used to go up to her and I'd say, I like what you said. And we would talk. And then eventually, it took me about a year, and I started meeting up for coffee. And then I didn't even ask her to be my sponsor, Rick. I just said one day, are you my sponsor? And she said, aye. And I asked her to take me through the steps. And I went through the steps, and the first spiritual awakening I'd say I'd have, because I was always telling my daughter how to manage her life and how to take care of her kids, because I didn't want her affected. And then I had to realise I actually was judging and criticising, and my wee sponsor says, and who do you think you are? You know, and did you do such a good job? And I was gobsmacked about me, because I thought, oh my God, what have I been doing? I've been judging and criticising. No wonder she's pushing me away like I did with my mother. And I was blown away by actually this revelation about what I was really doing, and how I thought I was the power and I was in charge and I knew best. And step one told me, you're powerless, Carin, you're not trying to admit it. And I had to see, where was I trying to be this power? And how was my life unmanageable? My thoughts and my actions were cuckoo. And there was more to step one than that, but I started to work like I seen that step one, and I admitted my powerless, and I accepted I had got it all wrong, and it was me that was the problem, and there was a solution in these steps. And I go to step two, and this come to believe in a power greater than me. I believed in nothing. I wasn't in anything like that. So I started to work step one and it worked for me. I took my eyes off and put them in me. I started minding my own business. I stopped judging and criticising. I stopped trying to control. I tried to do all these things with a sponsor supporting me all the way because I didn't know how to do it right. She had to guide me, and I loved that about the guiding you through it. And so my higher power became step one, is the truth. Step three was easy. I just had to make a decision to turn my will and my life on. My will was my thoughts and my actions. My life was my actions. My will was my... So that was easy for me. Step four, I had to go in and do that fearless moral infantry. And, you know, I was a bit feared, right? But then my sponsor said it's a fearless moral infantry, Carin. And I thought, all right. And she says, we need to go with faith. And I thought, right, okay. So I trusted her. I trusted her with my life because I didn't know how to do anything. I just was desperate and I knew I needed to get well and I knew I needed to do something about me. I knew this time and it took me about 20 odd years to get there in and out the rooms. So, and I done my fearless moral infantry and I think between step 4 to step 6, you know, step 4 I listed and analysed and I looked at my resentments and seen that I said to her, I've not got a resentment and I wrote 8 pages worth. I couldn't believe it. I resented everybody and their dog and me. My fears, my resentments were all driven in fears. I had thousands of pages of fears, you know, I was driven in fear. I looked at my sex conduct and the harms I caused others. By the time I'd done all that and get rid of the grosser handicaps and blocks to my higher power, my character defects were shining in the face, you know, my inconsideration, my selfishness, my self-centeredness, my self-righteousness. I was the biggest self-seeker. I thought I was Mrs. Independent and I was self-seeking everywhere. My people-pleasing, my caretaking, you know, and I wrote some gossiping, procrastination, indecision, self-pity, overspending, overeating, over everything, aggressive, defensive, envious, jealous, worthless, disrespectful. I had distrust. I took myself goddamn too seriously and I know how not to. It was all about me, and me. Mini me, you know, and I never knew because I thought I was all about you and I'd help you and I'd fix you. And I was a lovely lassie that would support the world and I loved taking care of everybody because it saved me looking at me. And I had to realise, actually, you're a selfish, self-centred person. It's all about you and you're just as sick as the alcoholic was then. You've got the mirror illness, you know, you've just not got the bottle. The bottle was just a symptom. You've got the same disease in your mind. You know what Mary Perrow says, the thinking instead of drinking. Mm-hmm. My thinking was mental. And so by the time I got to step 5, and step 5 just tidied up my step 4 with another human being, my sponsor, and I shared it with her and I shared it with God, you know, and I seen me, for the first time I seen the effects that alcoholism had had on me in my life. And I was really, at that point, I think, was when I heard Mary Perrow shares, I think she says, and before I heard her say step 5 made me feel part of Al-Anon, you know, instead of separate from, and that's what it done for me. I became part of this fellowship, part of we all use people, because even in the rooms I felt separate. I didn't know how to be part of, and step 5 done that. It brought me to be part of my higher power and part of yours, you know. I started to belong, and I loved what I heard somebody say the day about there's a seat waiting for me. I thought, God, there's a seat anywhere in the world for us. How nice is that? And
Carin, that's almost time. Okay. Another minute.
Okay, so I'll just finish it up. You know, I spent my life focusing and helping, curing, controlling. You know, and in step 6, I had to quit. I done it through most of my steps, but quit playing God. Step 1 told me to quit playing God, but stop playing God, Carin. You know, and through these 4 to 6, I was uncovering, discovering, and knew I was at the point of discarding, you know. And in step 6, I think it's just amazing. It just says we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. So I didn't need to do nothing. But by the time I go to step 6, I can assure you I was entirely ready to get rid of all that shit stuff in me, because all it had done was destroy me. you know, and the quality of life was nothing that I had when I lived that way, so I became entirely ready. I'd love to say they're going, step 7, humbly asked them, but I'd love to say, but I continually work on them, and I loved what Mary Perrell says, you know, they do a dance, you know, one pops up and it's like the weeds all jump up and go, and the higher power goes, do you think it's going? What you got to do about it now, Carin? You know, and things that started to come in was love and patience and tolerance, you know, and I love having, and that quality of getting rid of fear, and love comes in, you know, and the love of the higher power. And I feel so blessed today that I've got a loving higher power in my life. I've never believed in anything, but I do a two-way prayer in the morning, and it's awesome, you know, and it's in lockdown. I've been stuck in this house for 14 weeks. I've got a condition, I'm not allowed out. And the relationship that I've developed further, you know, another layer with my higher power. Mary Perrell's helped me in my process, you know, Aileen's helped me, you know, all these wonderful people. Yvonne, I love Al-Anon Without Borders. I've been in it for day dot. I absolutely love it. And I'll just finish up with saying they all to me. Aileen just asked me, do you want to share at a meeting? And I said, aye. If I had known it was this meeting, I might have said no, because I would have ran. But I'm grateful to be part of this special gift, this worldwide fellowship. And happy birthday when it comes aboard, everyone. I think you're a very special spiritual warrior, and it's great to be part of it. But thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Carin.
Thank you, Carin. The next speaker we have up is Ray from Paisley, Scotland, and Ray is going to share on a bit of 6 and 7. When you're ready, Ray. Ray, can you hear me? If you want to unmute, still muted. Ray, if you want to unmute yourself and come in, please.
I think Ray is not at her computer right now because I've asked her to start the video. And she has the power to unmute herself, but she's not. Somebody better text Ray. Oh, there she is.
Yeah, she there.
I think you got the wrong Ray. It's the other Ray.
It's Ray. The other Ray we're looking for.
Which Ray?
Ray, Paisley, Scotland.
Ray?
Not young Ray.
Ray is
Glasgow. The other Ray?
Oh, the other. There's
it's
another
the other Ray.
Oh, that Ray. Okay,
yeah.
Ray.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. The other Ray and I spent a lot of times.
Friends. Okay.
Names differently, Yvonne, and happy birthday. Thanks very much, Aileen, for asking me. I'm not too sure if I feel like that just now, but never mind. I will just start off by saying that I wasn't brought up in a home with alcohol. My father didn't drink because his father was a drinker and my mother's grandparents were drinkers. So I wasn't brought up in a home with alcohol, but I was brought up, I believe today I was brought up in a home with the effects of that. They passed that on to me because I heard someone sharing about that, saying that they were the grandchild or the great-grandchild of an alcoholic, and I think that's what it was for me. But I was to carry on and marry 2 alcoholics. The first one, my first husband, my mother picked him out for me, and I got married to him because I thought that was what you did. I didn't recognise the alcohol that was there, but I should recognise the alcohol in the second one. So when I came into Al-Anon, I came into my mother-in-law because of my second husband's drinking. But in actual fact, I was in Al-Anon, and I wasn't long in Al-Anon to realise that I was in there because of my mother and the effects that she'd had on me. So Mary Perrell has always been dear to me in that sense as well, where I picked up a lot of stuff from her. I was brought up with what I believe was an angry, angry woman who got into conflict with everyone, and I picked up the same traits. I came into Al-Anon. Nobody mentioned the steps to me when I first came into Al-Anon. It was all slogans and this is what you do. Just work on a slogan just now and everything will be fine. And then I was to meet someone who was to take me through the program. So when I get through the first time, when my step 4 and 5, I was never afraid of. I was so sick that I wanted to get fixed. But my first step 4 and 5, I really believe that I didn't really know what direction I was actually travelling in. So I returned to my steps, and it was actually I returned to my steps through the big books of Alcoholics Anonymous, taking it through the Al-Anon way, and came in contact with the 12 by 12. And that changed my life. And I remember when Mary Pell was in Glasgow in 2009, one of our wee group went up and asked her at the end, Mary Pell, what do you say to people in Al-Anon when they ask you about the big book? And her reply was, well, what was good enough for my founder was good enough for me. So I have always got to thank Mary Pell for me moving forward on that. But the second time round, that's how I travelled through my steps. And I'm grateful that Al-Anon allows us to do that. It allows us to go through the programme in whatever way we want to go through. But I must always remember that I'm an Al-Anon, but I have quite an affiliation with AA, and I did go to a lot of AA meetings when I first came into the programme. So my character defects, the biggest one for me in step 4 was self-righteousness, because of the anger, because of the resentments, because of how I felt about my mother, the selfishness, the dishonesty, the self-seeking, the frightened, the inconsideration towards my father. Being an only child, he was my perfect, didn't have him in my first 4 step. I didn't want to look at him at all because I thought he was a great guy, but I was to discover there was quite a lot of stuff there with him as well. And I used to sit in meetings and say things like, oh, my 6th step, oh, that's me crossing the road to meet God, when I never allow God any room to come in there to fix anything out. I didn't have that trust that step 6 was going to be a change for me. And I didn't have the trust that it would lead to step 7, because humility was nothing I could possibly take into my life at any point in time. I had no compassion for anything. I was in conflict with everything and everyone. And I think even when I first came into Al-Anon, because there's some people see me in Al-Anon now and they'll say, how are you doing, Ray? And I think, well, I think the last time I saw you, I don't think I was really that nice to you, and I think I said something that I shouldn't have said. But I then discovered, I kept going back, even going through my steps the second time round, and I had really hit on one of the things that I found fabulous when I did and it came out the 12 by 12 when I did my steps the second time round, was the 7 deadly sins. I absolutely resonated with them, and they gave me a good chance to stop this struggling and really look at the anger, the gluttony, the envy, the jealousy, just absolutely everything that was in the 7 deadly sins. And they've been there since the beginning of mankind. Gave me a chance to really, really have a look at myself and see, because you see, I wanted to go deeper. I never left Al-Anon bodily. I maybe went wandering and saying, I don't want to go back to my meetings because I'm bored. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. But remember, I've got this self-righteousness, and it's in every part of my life. I always shared that I never had a monkey in my back. I carried a soapbox about with me. And the first chance I got, I'd put that soapbox on the ground and I would tell you exactly how you were going to live your life. So needless to say, my second husband, both husbands died through alcoholism, and I still couldn't see it. I still couldn't get it. And my second husband, I chose him because he was really handsome, he was really good looking, and he was absolutely everything that Ray'd ever been looking for. But I got the alcoholism with it. I got the drinking, and I got a life, really. When I think back to it, it was really, it could be quite horrendous sometimes. I've got to push all that stuff aside sometimes. But I was really glad to discover that my character defects, I could marry up to the selfishness, the dishonest, the self-seeking and the frightened. And my sponsor at that time said to me, count up how many selfish you've come up with on your 4th step, count up how many dishonest. And I was horrified to discover how dishonest I was, because I thought I was just cat's pajamas. I really, really did. And I thought that I was always absolutely right. And I had to look at what kicked them all off for me. And I had to look at the fact that I was a work in progress. Compassion, nope, couldn't spell it. My sponsor used to get me, I share this all the time as well. She used to phone me up and she'd say, now, my sponsor used to say, when I would phone my sponsor, I would say to her, she'd say to me, right, what happened? How do you feel? And what is the solution? What are you going to do about it? And then we'll talk about it. But I do not want any of these scenarios. I do not want, she said this and that kicked me off. And she said that and that kicked me off. And while all this was going on and I was going through Al-Anon, I had a mother that hated Al-Anon because it took me away from her. Because I was fused to my mother with approval seeking. I couldn't go out to, say, the movies, to watch a movie, because I'd be sitting saying, I wonder if my mother would have liked this film. I wonder if that'd been wonderful. And it took a lady in Al-Anon to turn and say to me, do you realise that you're taking your mother to places that she probably doesn't want to go, and that's why she's kicking off? And that's why she's doing what she's doing. But I was so fused with the approval seeking to my mother, and it probably was happening. So while I was being this self-righteous person, I had absolutely no self-esteem. I didn't like myself. I didn't like what I did. I was always striving for the outside, the materialistic. I could maybe come, say Aileen had a barbecue, and I would go along to the barbecue, very materialistic, and I'd go along to the barbecue, and I would leave her house, and I would go and get an estate agent's window and stand and look in it to see if I could find a house that was bigger than mine that I could have a barbecue. And do you know what the steps taught me? Especially step 6? I don't like barbecues, and I don't like going to them. And if anybody invites me to one, I don't want to go. I mean, all of this stuff was so contradictory. It was unbelievable. And I just couldn't see that everything that I was doing was absolutely ending in disaster. And really, step 6 was telling me all along to stop struggling. Doing the spiritual surrender, and that spiritual surrender came for me the night that I was at an open AA meeting. And page 64 is a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous was on the wall, and it said that we suffer from a spiritual malady. And that night I knew that I suffered from a spiritual sickness, and until I accepted that, then I wasn't going to get any better in Al-Anon, which I then continued to start to do. So one of the things that the self-righteousness couldn't let me accept was that I was human and that I was fallible and that I could make mistakes. It was absolutely okay, because I had become the perfect little child. I had become the perfect child that behaved herself. I learned to manipulate when I was a child so that I would get taken to places that nobody else would get taken to. Or we'll just take Ray along because she's really a good wee girl and she behaves herself. Little did they know that I was manipulating absolutely everything. But running underneath all of that was this terrible anger. And I have had people in my life and still have people in my life who say to me, I can't imagine that you were that angry person, but I'd been taught by an angry person. So yeah, I was, and I would face Goliath. I would go in and there's another speaker that I listen to who actually tells us all the time to just shut our big fat mouths, and that was really what I had to do, because I was destroying everything in my path. But anyway, there was all the good stuff going on as well, the other side of that. So, but I had to become teachable. I had to allow people to tell me things. I had to learn to sit and listen. And one of the biggest things that helped me in Al-Anon was service of that, because it was going along to my business meetings where I had to accept a group conscience. Maybe I have to change that. I had to accept a group conscience if that's the way that it swung. But all of that tempered me down, took me down, brought me down into that, because I'm trying to achieve this serenity. And recovery for me is about balance. It is also admitting failure. I didn't want to admit that either, that I could fail at anything to meet our needs. Now, about 6 weeks ago, I had an accident, which has given me time to actually sit in the house just now and reflect on an awful lot of stuff. I don't know if I can explain to everybody exactly what I mean, but I do know that I want that slowness now. I do know that I want that serenity. I don't want to be that truly opinionated person again, because I was always a leader. I organised everybody to go to conventions. I just knew it all, you know. And I had a visit earlier today from someone. Well, John and I were brought up together as children. He's in AA now, and he's in a nice AA relationship, and they were in today. And it was great to actually sit and talk about these things today and just say that all of these things are possible. Now, I'm 34 years in Al-Anon, and I did hear Mary Pell saying in a share just recently there, you know, the premeditated revenge. And I've always had an affiliation with Mary Pell, because I could so recognise myself in wanting to just get stuck in there and change everything. And the day that I had the accident, I'd had a confrontation with somebody on the complex that I stay on. Now, I'm not saying that caused the accident, but it also gave me food for thought, because why do I need to tell everybody that they're wrong all the time? So yeah, the programme's softening me down. That's what the character defects are for me. If I can take care, when I do a step 10 at night, I do look at, have I been selfish today? Have I been dishonest, self-seeking, frightened or inconsiderate? And if I've been any of these things, to what degree have I been these things? What degree has it held me back? So I'll just move quickly on to step 7, because I think my time's probably going on. But all I want to say about step 7 is the word humble. Oh my goodness gracious me. Humility. The word humble, when I can actually put that into my life today. And I'll only ever be as humble as I am grateful today. I have to sit down and be grateful. Gratitude has got to play a huge, huge part in this for me, because this is going to be the foundation for the rest of my life. And it also is part of the acceptance of Ray today. Because you cannot be, there's a song, "Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way." And that is just always been my signature tune, I probably reckon. And it's acceptance. But the important part of humility for me is being open-minded. And I can spout all that stuff off to somebody else, and I can say, listen, you're not accepting that person as they are, where they should be, and I'm telling somebody else to do that, and I'm not actually doing it in my own life. And it's part of the programme, and it's part of being teachable and learning to listen. I just had a huge struggle with listening. I definitely did, and I still can if I don't watch. I've had people say to me in the last few days that I don't appear to struggle with my recovery. I don't know if that's exactly what they meant. I don't, but I do. I've got the negativity just the same as everybody else. I can go into deep. I had a friend in the programme that said to me when I was living with my second husband, people make remarks sometimes about, and it was about depression. I don't think you've ever known what depression is. And I said, well, I don't think how do you know that? How well do you know me? Because I used to hide under beds and hide in cupboards and not open the door and have people shout through the letterbox. And since that's another change for me, since I've had this accident, I have had to open my door. I've had to open the door into my wee world that I try to keep in perfection at times, and allow people to come into the house and do things for me, which has been an absolutely amazing experience for me, because I used to keep everybody out. Some people would say they use the alcoholism to keep people out, but I would use the perfectionism. So, but I will finish. I don't know when I'm listening to myself if I've sounded that positive, but I'm just trying to explain what my character defects did to me. But what I do know is that I reconciled with my mother. When my mother died, she, as I say, she didn't like Al-Anon because she couldn't understand why I could speak to other people in Al-Anon, older women, maybe women her age in Al-Anon, and yet I couldn't speak to her. And it was because I was being ridiculed, and it was because I was being put down. But my sponsor did take me aside and say to me, your mother only did the best that she could with what she had. And that was something that changed my life. I go along to another meeting. I go along to a meeting in a part of Glasgow where I pass where my gran was brought up and the house my mother was brought up in, and every time I pass it, I shout hello, because I had to look at that and say my mother was part of a family of 8 children in one room, one kitchen, and what they call an outside toilet in Glasgow in those times. And that was, you had to leave your house to go away down and use the toilet, the bathroom with everybody else. So I don't know, Aileen, how am I for time?
About 2 minutes, Ray. 2-3 minutes.
So I hope I've covered. There's nothing that I've said. I've got a wee pile of notes here, and there's nothing that I've said that I thought I was going to say, but I hope it's all made sense. I love this programme. I love going along to my open AA meetings. I love being involved in conventions. I just absolutely I love Al-Anon, and I love doing my service. Except I'm in PI just now, PI coordinator for my area, and the lockdown time will be added on to the end. So when I thought I was getting off the hook, I'm not going to be getting off the hook on that. I'll have to continue with that. But I don't know where it is. My mother-in-law that brought me into Al-Anon, and I'll never forget her for that. I will never forget her for that. But the one thing I have to say for myself is I got a gift. She gave me a gift at the first meeting she took me to, and I picked that gift up and I went with it. So I hope I've made sense. I hope I've talked slowly enough. I don't know if I sound Glasgow, or I live in Giffnock now. Hopefully I sound Giffnock. But I don't know if I've actually made